All right, welcome everybody. Good afternoon, I think, for most of us, and good morning for Johannes and whoever else is joining us from overseas. My name is Mark Cosgrove, if I haven't met you already, and welcome to Global Challenges Local Leadership. So we'll just start and get the introduction stuff out of the way. Um, Johannes.
Yeah, welcome everyone. I'm looking forward to impulses today that inspire us all. Just a quick background for myself. I'm the CEO of PROAKTIV, and I'm also the co-owner. And I'm looking forward to share impulses today that bring us practically forward in terms of leadership and global leadership that meets local challenges. I myself have been in the industry or different industries before, tourism, service sector, manufacturing, car companies, Mercedes-Benz, and others. I've been 1 decade in Asia, living in Asia, operating from Asia. So Asia is I have 2 feet, I always say 2 legs. One is in Europe, one is in Asia. And I'm looking forward to see both kind of people today also on the call. I stand for results-driven leadership and interaction. So I'm also looking forward later on in the Q&A to get into that with you all on the call. And yeah, I'm looking forward to also hear what are maybe challenges for you at the moment in terms of leadership and how we can do things all with 2 things, with joy and with results, both stick together like glue.
Fantastic. And my name is Mark Cosgrove. I think I probably know most everybody. I'm the managing director of PROAKTIV for Asia Pacific. One of only two people I think in the company that doesn't actually speak German. Like Johannes, I've worked in different places, doing different things. Before I was a trainer and doing training and development, I was a writer in marketing communications. Was a ghostwriter, journalist, and things like that. And for the last almost 2 decades, I've been living in Asia, Hong Kong, and now in Singapore. And I do training around the whole region. So looking forward to having a conversation today. And it is that, many of the people we interact with are like us. We've moved and worked in different places. And so we're acutely aware of the kinds of challenges that businesses face. And when we were putting together this webinar, we were coming at it from the perspective of these global challenges. And I kept saying to people, they ask, yeah, I'm not in a global company. Does this matter? It's like, yeah, I get it, but you're impacted by the globe. You're impacted by things that are happening all around the world. So the challenges we're facing are global. They're not just unique to wherever we happen to live or work at the moment, but our response and our how we react, how we deal with, how we manage ourselves and the people we work with and our businesses in that context really matters. When we talk about, what are those things? There's some examples there on the screen of economic downturns. Of course, we're watching all the tariff funny business. There's wars. There's all these different things, and we're kind of little boats on a big stormy sea. Sometimes I'm sure that's how it can feel. And then that's just that. And then we get into things like AI and these different kinds of things, and we think, God, how do we handle this? And the question really begins to come up then to the top, which is to say, how do we lead in the middle of all of it? How do leaders lead in that context? So, Johannes, sir.
So how can we adapt, right? So everything is disrupting here and there, but everything is also challenging us. If we are in Bangkok, if we are in any country, if we're in Germany, if we're here or there, we are interrupted by, let's say, many things, not only politics, geopolitics, but also economic up and down shifts every time. So we are in a scenario where we are in that game altogether. So that is why global disruption at any scale will interfere with us. And we're now, given the technology, of course, it's much faster than ever before. We all know that. It's just a message of, okay, how can we understand in which game we are? Because then we can interfere and we can influence it. Can you go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Right. So what we see with many of our clients is that there is an incremental need and want for corporate culture. You all heard about corporate culture. And our understanding at PROAKTIV is to look at success in a different way, slightly different way, to add two more aspects. It's the people and the results, right, that we all strive for. So success is built by people, by a certain culture, and culture means for us how we do things. See, in previous years, or still at so many companies, it's so important, oh, what do we achieve? What do we achieve? But it's more tending to, okay, how do we achieve things? And that's the cultural part. How do we lead? How do we motivate people not only, but also how do we give orientation to people in times of great disruption and transformation? New business models need to be deriving from what we do on an everyday basis. So how do we do things? That's the culture part. So we need people, we need the culture, and of course, the results. That all makes success then realistic and happen. Thank you. Yes. And I think when I look into my personal leadership, right, personal and conscious leadership, I lead currently a team here in Europe, about 30 people in my division. So orientation is a big thing, and orientation means clarity, giving clarity to people, and even in uncertain times, and even if you're under pressure. So clarity under pressure is a challenge all leaders face, as far as I can tell, and especially now. And the question is, how can you give orientation? How can you give more clarity? How can you be even listening more to your team and adhere to those aspects? Yes, next slide, please.
So when we look at some of the challenges, right, and that's what we want to do. So while we're sitting here today listening to the stuff we have to tell you, our goal today really is to bring up conversation, look at it. What are some of the challenges you personally are facing in the business you're a part of, and what's your reaction? How are you dealing with what's happening? How's your organization doing that, and how are the people around you doing it? And I think one that's hitting everybody, right? We can all agree, no matter what industry we're in, whether it's logistics or banking and finance or FMCG, we all have our individual challenges. Well, one thing that's hitting all of us is AI. So, when we got computers, we called it, digitalization. So there's a new word that someone's invented, cognification, right? Which cognific meaning to think. Everything is being AI-ified, so everything's being cognified, and this is a huge challenge. You show up to work on Monday morning, and your business is different because AI is a part of it, or you're terrified that you're going to be behind your peers, your colleagues, your competitors because you're not AIing enough or fast enough. So we have these forces, and it can seem quite overwhelming, as we said. So our goal today is just to kind of go, okay, if this is what we're dealing with, right? What can we do? And how should we be behaving? Because the thing we have to kind of get our heads around is there's a quote, and I love this quote. We've all heard it, where it says, the only thing that's constant is change. What I love about that quote is it's 4,000 years old. It was said by a Greek philosopher 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. So it's madness that they thought things were changing back then, and look at the world we're in today. But now the change isn't fast. It's not gradual. It's instantaneous. Like I said, you show up to work and your job is different. Your life is different. And when we get that kind of panicky feeling of, what do I do? What do we do? Well, we have to remember one essential thing. And this is where we start with the business we're in, and how do we manage the people who work with us. We have to remember we don't lead technology, and we shouldn't be being led by technology. In fact, we have to focus back on, as leaders, even though we have to focus on results, and we've got P&Ls, and we've got numbers and milestones and goals, we got to get back to the simple fact that we lead people, and that is what we're being paid to do primarily, and it's also what's going to save us in the end, because the people are going to be the answer. All right, so that's a great premise, right? It's a good place to start the conversation. So what's next? How do we do that? So what can leaders do, and how should leaders be behaving? And then the other thing we're going to give you is some tools to do that. So let's look at that first one. Johannes is going to take us through this. Yeah.
So leading people, and if you see the chart here, very colorful. So we put it on there. People need kind of an orientation, is what we said before. And how do we do this? If you see the timeline here on the bottom, there is the past, present, and the future. That's the timeline, right? I'll take you for a moment into the present there. You see the blue bar and change is happening right now. Just what Mark, you said. You go to the office, client has a new understanding of what he or she wants, what they want. Some email is checking in, some WhatsApp is coming in, some message on LinkedIn, wherever. And this means also change already, right? So what do we do in moments of change, small or big changes? Mostly our people, and I'm not talking to all of you here on the webinar, but it's human that people and our workforce are most likely do the following. They tend to get into the past, right, rapidly. So I'm asking you, if you imagine people going home from work, maybe they go for dinner, maybe they go have a beer, whatever. What do they talk about? What do they say? And when we answer this question, sometimes the answer could be they're telling everybody what wasn't working so well today, right? Or which change is there, and the next question they do ask is, oh, why do we need to do this? Or, oh, we have this new technology, we have the new AI, oh, we have the Microsoft Copilot now. Why do we have to use this in that way? So people are defensive to change in the first place. And the next question they ask is, who decided that we need to do this, right? So there is a lot of resistance sometimes, and I think we all have seen that, we all have been there, and we all see that actually sometimes. And we call it thinking in the world of problems. That's a reactive part, react to the change that is coming. And we are more forced to act because we are kind of developing something and want to neglect something. Instead, what could we do instead, right? And the answer is here more to the future side, because coming to quotes, there's also a nice quote. I like to proact into the future because that's where I want to live, or that's where we all will live, right? We will live in the future. So how do we get people to the green side? And one answer is to, as leaders, repeat questions like, okay, changes now. What are we going to do? How do we use this technology? How do we move forward? See, that's a total different question than, oh, why do we need to do this? Who was in charge of this decision, this change? Oh, why did the client do this? Now we want to go to the green side, to the proactive side. And this is a place where we want to do something. You could also say we anticipate things. So empowered leaders proact. That's the message here, and they don't react. And how this thinking in solutions evolves as well is not only a mindset, as you can see here on this timeline, a proactive thinking in solutions mindset, but it's also very practical, which we can see on the next kind of slides. And by the way, if you have a question now, also mark it on the chat. Jeremy is collecting that so we can get back to you. So it's a mindset, reactive versus proactive, where in the proactive state of mind, we are already thinking in solutions, and we are going along our calls, our daily calls with our colleagues, with our bosses, with our clients, and we have a proactive language. So a language in our head, first of all, asking the right questions, asking how we can solve things instead of neglecting, and also open our minds for new solutions. Versus reactive, people are sometimes in this state because they're just so much under stress, under pressure. And so it's for us leaders also to see, okay, how can we get those people to the green side again? One answer that I can share with you is, of course, empathy and listening to the people, see in which state they currently are, and then take them step by step from the red side to the green side. And how we can do this, we can see on the next few examples. So avoiding problematic language. When you ask yourself a question, when you ask yourself the question, am I as a leader talking positive when I say, hey guys, welcome to the meeting. Hey, look, the client has this challenge here, and for us, the problem is that this is not solved yet, and we need to update a project timeline. And also, the problem is this, the problem is that. So when we all the time talk about problems ourselves and even using that language, what happens to the energy of the people? Rather going up or going down? I think we know the answer. So the energy is more likely going down. And when we talk about problems, our people will also behave in the red way in the past, and they ask the wrong questions. So we want to change the language here, and use something like, okay, the situation is today this, our challenge is that. So changing the wording. Now people tell me, Johannes, that's a little bit too easy, no, isn't it? Well, do the easy thing, do the very little things. The little things have a big impact. So this is where it starts. And I call it, we influence the energy in the room, even if it's on site or online. From my experience, online, it's even much more important how we do things. Again, this is also culture, how we do things. Then focus on finding the solutions, meaning asking the right questions. What is the solution? What can we do here? What can we do for the client? What can we do now to influence the future in that way? And when we talk about leadership, this is a very important now little aspect. Have you ever seen team members coming to you and bring an issue, let's say, back to your table and say, here, Johannes, here, I couldn't solve it yet, and the problem is this, the problem is that. So they're telling you all the problems. So as a leader, you have two options. In my mind, we have only option, but practically speaking, most people would also go back, okay, and say, okay, I'll do it myself. Oh, that's the worst, right? So what could we do instead of putting this issue on board ourselves as a leader again? We shall ask the right questions and educate our people in finding a solution. Now, you may think that sounds also simple too, but guess what? Many people are taking it on board themselves, or they are not giving the right orientation for people and guide them. So the guidance question could be here, repeating the question, what can we do? What do you think is a solution? I want you to go back and think about what could be a way forward. And then a third pillar here for keys to ensure success and bring people to the green and proactive side is to be prepared. Prepared for meetings, prepared for a call, prepared for maybe a difficult dialogue with our teammates if you need to and want to put someone back on the right track in terms of goal attainment, what not. So we say preparation is 90% of success. So ask yourself the question for a few seconds. Am I prepared? Could I prepare sometimes a little bit more for myself to be much more focused? Preparation is 90% of success. So look into that. Look also into your teams. I suggest into your team's preparation. How do the meetings run, right? How effective do we use our time? Everybody is actually complaining about, oh, we have too much to do. And sometimes it's also that we can get a little bit fine tuning on preparation, if we are honest. All right.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides, because it's one thing to say to do stuff, it's another thing to figure out how to do it. Sorry, I just wanted to put that in, that we will jump in with the practical application for this. And I think something that's important to know about what Johannes has just been saying is, we always talk about insight, and then we have to talk about the practical applicability of it. So the insight is, yes, I have to think in solutions. I have to think with future focused language. Well, what does that look like? And so, Johannes, I guess you're going to take us through a couple of examples of what that kind of future focused language looks like. Yeah,
absolutely. So look at this sentence here. Typical one. The problem with this operator is they're always late, right? So we have a statement here. What happens to the energy in the room? Yeah, it goes slightly down. Yes, please continue. So do we focus on the issue or do we focus on the opportunity? So one different way of approaching it could be one issue we're monitoring with this operator is lead to time reliability, right? So always looking forward, thinking forward, and also adapting our language in this particular way. Then the next one. Have you heard that? Yes, but. What happens if you have an idea and somebody says yes, but there's an answer in the room saying, oh, yes, yes, sir, yes, Herbert, but. So it always kills some argument, or it kills some idea. So better off we are with yes and is always connecting. I see your point about this and this. Let's explore how we can meet both quality and cost standards, right? So many people talk about eye level, talking on eye level and talking with respect, not only to clients, but also internally. And we want to bring the ideas from team members up. So this is also leadership, to invite people to contribute. Yeah, we talk about efficiency, we talk about people need to contribute. So we also want to have eye-level conversations here. So yes, and helps us. Well, this project was a failure. Or instead, what could we say? And also it expresses our mindset, right? Well, there was a setback and we're working on it to resolve it, right? So this is also dealing or kind of diving into the mindset of growth mindset. And growth mindset, all the people talk about it. We are very practical, and my approach is always to say, how can we change things little by little? And for some people, it might feel too easy, but this is exactly where we want to start with our language, the way we actually address those things.
Yeah, because I think it's really important, if you see this on the surface, it's great to say, oh, this vocabulary is more empowering or it's better, whatever. But it's also about reprogramming how our brains work. If we view everything that happens as a problem, it changes how our mind works. It changes our behavior. And by the way, it also doesn't make your experience of the world be particularly positive. If every time somebody knocks on your door and says, hey, Johannes, what's the problem? Well, you start to see the world that way. You're not going to enjoy your job or your life. So I think you have a couple more examples. I just wanted to put that in because for me, it's about like rewriting the software in my brain for this stuff. So it's not just the words, it's what the words are doing to how I experience the world.
Absolutely. And we feel in a certain way when we hear words, right? So, oh, it's your fault. It's delayed. Yeah. It's almost like an assault, maybe.
So, sorry, am I looking here?
So instead, let's take joint responsibility and review the specs and the process for next time, right? So how do we talk to our people? How do we always find the green sides just instantly, like a reflex, right? Like a reflex, instead of accusing, instead of looking into why did this happen or whose fault is it, we go directly into, okay, what can we do now onwards, forward? And of course, we can give feedback. However, it is suggested to always have this more slightly thinking in solutions mindset. The employee's weakness is quality control. Okay, we see a development area here. And why don't we just say something like, let's strengthen this area here and focus on the strength in particular, right? This is also something people discuss widely everywhere. What should we focus on to develop the weaknesses or to look into the strength? And this is also one factor we can admit here.
So when we want to, like reset and kind of, like I said, with the software, right? You want to get the mindset shift because it really has to start there as leaders. We have to, first of all, begin inside of our own minds because no one's that good of an actor. If you think something is rubbish, you're not going to be able to fake it with the people who work for you. So we want to look at a couple of little strategies for how do we deal with this transformation? How do we not just survive, but maybe even thrive? And one of the things that Johannes said earlier, I want to touch upon again, is this idea of preparation. you know, we get into, again, it's mindset. You're busy, you're busy, you're busy. And people say, oh, you need to sit down and plan your day, your week, your month. And you go, I don't have time for that. I'm too busy to do these things. And it's not spending time or taking time. It really is investing time. So one of the things, if you take nothing out of today other than this, take this one, which is spend some time, invest some time for yourself in your leadership, in what it takes to be a leader, what you've learned from your leadership, what you need to do, what are your goals, what's hidden from you, what do you need to learn, how do you need to stay up to speed on and learn about the new technologies or the change or transformation that's coming. Because it really comes down to this. I love this quote. It's not a famous quote. It's from one of our colleagues in Germany. And he said, yeah, I can spend my whole day chasing chickens, or I could build a fence. And, when the chickens are running around, it seems that I don't have time to build a fence. But the reality is, you can stop chasing chickens and look at so that's my invitation, is look at your workload right now. Now, the cool thing is, you guys all showed up today on this. You took an hour out of your day, a very busy one, I'm sure. You took an hour to sit down and have a conversation about how do I deal with global challenges and empower local leaders. And these are some of the skills you want to, so you've already started doing it, right? You've already started investing time for your leadership focus and think, right, what do I need to do? So how do I put that into practical use? Well, one way to do it is to think about preparation before engagement. No leader, I mean, take any kind of a analogy you want, whether it's sports or military or anything like that. Nobody goes into the engagement without having thought about it beforehand, without having thought about what it is they need, what it is their team needs, what instructions need to flow, minimizing bottlenecks, whatever it might be. Everybody has to have a plan. Now, of course, we also have to recognize that, the best plans in the world don't survive engagement with the enemy, or whatever the quote is from I think it was Napoleon or somebody who said that. But the reality is, we do have to still walk in with a plan. And there is a quote I really do love, which is, the plan isn't the point, the planning is. So the activity of sitting down and putting together a plan and thinking strategically, thinking about your assets, thinking about your strengths and weaknesses, thinking about where you need to apply yourself, what are the implications of your decisions, who's on your team, who needs more, who needs less, how do you need, all of those questions. Simply the act of answering them, even if they all have to be thrown out 5 minutes later because the world changed, that process makes you a better leader. And it has all of that information and all of that thinking and logic, firmly established. So the preparation before engagement. Now, the pushback we get when we talk about this in programs is, oh, I'm too busy. I got too many things on the go, man. I'm working 9 to 5, work. And we say, okay, but I want you to take some time and prepare. And people say, no, if I did that, if I sat down and took an hour out of my day or out of my week to try to plan things, I would still have to do the same amount of work, and it would be just like I'd be here till midnight. And so it's easy to get into that mindset. But that's not what happens. When we sit down to prepare, we become more efficient and better. We get more done in the time we have. We get the stuff done we need to get done quicker because we have a plan. We understand what's at stake and what we need to do. And as a result, we end up with this ROI. Now, maybe not the first time you do it, maybe not even the first month or 2 months you do it, but as you get good at this, as you sit down and really plan out your day, your week, your life, you'll find that your ability to deal with what comes up is improved, and you become more efficient. A very practical way to apply this. Okay, what does that mean? Well, the next time you set a meeting with somebody, write an agenda. Why did we stop? There used to be a time when meetings had agendas and minutes, and somebody took the minutes and somebody ran the meeting and kept people on track. And I know there's a couple of people on the call here today. They're old enough to remember these days at the beginnings of our career, right? Vinod, I see you nodding, right? Back in the day, we used to have agendas and we had minutes and stuff, and we stopped doing that. And we became so inefficient. You spend an hour in a room and people talking around and around and around, and no one's reining them in. No one's keeping them on track. No one's making sure decisions are being made and to-dos are being assigned and all of that. So one way that written preparation works is, Vinod, invite me to a meeting, give me 3 or 4 bullet points, and then when we're in that meeting, we stick to it. And we will get so much more done, and the time we spend will be so efficient. The ROI on something as simple as write an agenda is crazy high. And if we think about our life that way, if you have an agenda for a meeting, Vinod, like you and I are going to have a meeting next week for an hour. If we have an agenda for that hour, why aren't you writing an agenda for your life? Your career, your job, your project, right? And you realize, yeah, you know what, we really should be. We need to be taking that kind of control. And we're the leaders. It's one thing we say this in a training. Oops, we say this in a training, and the people are quite junior. They go, yeah, but I work for this guy, and he's a crazy maker. Well, we don't have that excuse. You know, we're actually in a position where we can make this kind of change happen. Speaking of change, you've seen the slide already. The other way in which we can really, utilize our tools, the proactive tools, to help ourselves be better leaders and managers. And again, it's partly mindset shift, and it's this. We've done a lot of work recently in the realm of change management training. There's actually people on this call that were in some of it, and we were doing this engagement with a client of ours where there's this huge change going on in their company, and as a result of this, they recognized that they needed to deal with the human side of it. Yes, there's the logistics and who's going to work here and what are the job descriptions and the reportings and the matrices and all that. But they were smart enough to recognize that we also have to deal with the people. So the change is mandatory, but panicking about it isn't. And we recognize, and we did the training where we gave people the tools to be able to deal with the change as it came and not become panicked or freaked out. And in fact, one of the survey results we got at the end of that program, one of the people wrote in the comment section, this is the first time I've felt comfortable since the change was announced. So that was awesome, because now the person could get back to doing her job, could become, be successful, was able to deal with the change and the transformation that was happening in her career. And so a leader has to be a change, first of all, a change agent in order to be a change manager. So what's a tool for that? I love a good tool. I like a good couple of steps. Let's do a tool and get things moving. So one of the things I love is this thing. It's the circles of control and influence. And you might have seen this before. So at the very core circle are all those things that are happening that we're dealing with, which we care about. They matter. They're important to us, and we have control over them. So that's the circle of control. These are my team, myself, my reaction, my mindset, all the stuff that's in my control, the job I'm doing, the sales I'm making, in my case, the training I'm delivering. I have control over that. I can manage it. Okay. The next circle is the circle of influence. Now, this is stuff I care about and it matters to me. I don't have direct control, right? But I have influence. Okay, so I should be spending some of my time there. And this might be my relationships with vendors, my relationships with clients, for example, peers that I can influence and have conversations with, but I'm not their boss, so I can't tell them what to do. And then the final circle is the circle of concern. This is the stuff I still care about it. It matters. It's important, but I have no control. Nothing I can do. I can't even influence. So this is the stuff that's outside of your purview. Maybe strategic decisions being made by the organization at a very high level over which you have no connection. Economy, macro stuff. I'm not going to get political, but none of us have any control over Donald Trump or what he's going to do next. So this is the stuff we really, if you think about it, we really shouldn't be spending very much time worrying about. So what this diagram teaches us is a simple approach to where to spend my time, where to spend my effort, where to spend my energy. So the process is quite simple. And don't worry about this type being very, very small. I'll run through it quickly, and we will share the deck with you shortly so you can read through it. But it's a simple process, which is to say, identify everything you're dealing with, all the stuff that you're concerned with, that matters to you, that's important, that's impacting you, and distinguish. Is this something over which I have control? Is it something over which I have influence? Or is it something over which I've got nothing? And then focus on the things you can control and influence. Notice what skills you can use there to be more influential. Improve the skills of dealing with the things that you have control over. And then using whatever tools you have or can find, books or meditation or whatever, learn how to let go. Learn how to not be too stressed out or worried about the things that you can't control. We cannot control macroeconomic global crises, so let's not worry about them. Instead, let's focus on the stuff we can do. So what does that mean? Big economic crisis, industry's in a downturn, things are very, very challenging, can't fix that. What can you do? Well, I can make sure my organization is resilient. I can make sure my people are upskilled. I can become a better decision maker. I can become more agile, be more proactive, not reactive, and shift my mindset. I can't control the world. I can only manage how I react to the world. That's true for an individual going through a personal crisis as much as it's true for an organization at a larger level. So these are just some tools that we can approach. And this is the kind of conversation we need to be having with the people we work with and who work for us. Because at the end of the day, it's those individuals that are going to be making day by day granular decisions that are going to impact our business. And we need to make sure they have the right mindset and they understand it's not about technology, it's about people. We have to train them and ourselves to think in solutions, focus on the future-focused language, prepare our leadership, and focus on what we can control versus the other stuff. So we hope today in the last 40 minutes or so, we've given you some things to think about and some ideas, and we're happy to expand on them. We have time now for a few questions. If you'd like to join the conversation and ask us a question. We didn't want to talk too much, just sort of share with you some of our ideas and some of the concepts, as mentioned here, that we think are fundamental to creating resilient, proactive leadership at every level in your organization. So with that, I'll throw it open to the floor and invite questions, comments, arguments, insults. I'm good with any of it. So just unmute yourself and who's going to be first? Who's going to be courageous and go first?
Mark, if I may.
Please.
I just wanted to throw in a comment and maybe ask you for an answer, because as you know, we operate in Asia, and in Asia, culture of discussion and conversation, especially with management and employees, with staff, is very different to some other parts of the world. So you mentioned before in one of your slides that people must be invited to contribute. So how do you do that in a way that is adjusted to the respective cultural habits?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Michael. I think you're right? Everything has to be filtered through the appropriate lens. And that's why, going back to the slide from earlier, we say people, culture, results. That culture piece is, yes, the culture of countries, Germany versus Canada versus Hong Kong, whatever. But it's also company culture. And then generational culture is also a thing we have to think about. I'm Gen X. Johannes is a millennial, and Jeremy, our colleague here in Singapore, is a Gen Z. So like we're cross-generational as well. There's a few ways to do it, Michael, in very practical terms. One is we have to generate that culture within the organization. We have to show people it's safe to do. It's a slow burn to do it that way. We have to really lead people to that point so they get that it's cool to do that. And it's also required. It's part of how we communicate with each other here. And you do that by, in addition to showing that, but you also set up structures for it. Just yesterday, I was leading a workshop for an organization. They wanted to brainstorm ideas for business development within the organization and improvements in process and things. And so we actually built an exercise where people got to voice out their opinion anonymously by writing it on Post-it notes and sticking to Post-it notes, and no one was talking. So you got all of the ideas on the page and nobody knew where they came from. There was no bullies dominating the conversation. There was no, oh, well, Michael said this, so I'm going to follow what he said. There was none of those. We managed to sort of subvert all of those things. So that is the kind of thing you need to do, is figure out ways to get people to talk. And figure out ways to get people to contribute. It could be something as simple as you're at a meeting, Michael, and you have a bunch of people at the table and you want them to brainstorm. You go last. Don't contribute at all. You just take the notes. You just take the minutes. You're brainstorming a new idea. Let the team do it, and then they have to. They're not going to just listen for what you have to say and then follow it. So, Johannes, what did you want to throw in there as well?
Very important point here, and I would like to contribute to that. Would we agree and this is a rhetorical question, right? Would we agree, Michael, and to all of you, you have similar challenges. Would we agree that we are in a global world and operating, our companies are operating in a global world, right? If so, then the question is, well, if we play that global game where we interact with different cultures, with different standards, and also we interact on the same level of we are looking all for results to keep being in that business. And therefore, the question is, do we also want to adapt slightly our way of operating to global standards? And my answer is yes. The culture is still the culture. In Hong Kong, we are still having different ways of doing things. And yet, we also want to adapt no matter how many languages we have or teammates we have from different nationalities. We also want to bring a certain level of standards. And I want to give you a very practical example. People always ask me, Johannes, how do you do leadership here and there? Isn't it different? Absolutely, it is different. And one example is how we give praise, for example. We give praise in a totally different way in Hong Kong than in Germany, right? In Germany, we would have a meeting, a gathering, and we say, hey, Jeremy, well done, please stand up, big applause. We would not even do this in Hong Kong, maybe, even not if it's positive, because people like maybe praise in a different way. But here's the question, Michael, and to all of you. We do it differently. There's different culture, but don't we need still the aspect of praise? Don't we need that? And when the answer is yes, people want and need praise for their motivation, right? We help them motivate themselves. If the answer is yes to that, then we need a certain set of tools which help us to bring that kind of standard into a company, no matter where the culture or where the people are from. Of course, adapted, but we need praise. We need to share our expectations, right? And this is sometimes tricky. And one last comment is, we do train since 30 years. We have this experience also in, let's say, the German market or the European market. So a different culture, but the topics are the same. How can we engage people? And in my experience, I've been living in Hong Kong also for a decade. This is the same here. We want to engage them, and maybe sometimes it turns out to be a little bit harder, but the mechanism is the same. And Mark, you said building that that environment where people are happy to share and are feeling confident to share. And that brings us back to the language, right? Last sentence, that brings us back to the language of not talking about problems, not assaulting, but bringing the people to a table where they are open to share.
Yeah, and that's why I point to the culture thing. People think culture is something fluffy. I don't think it is. I think culture is happening at your company, whether you pay attention to it or not, whether we spend time on building it or thinking about it or designing it or not. There is a culture in every organization, and you know it. If you sat down, by the way, if you've ever been in an organization, you go out for a beer on a Friday night and with your colleagues and you complain about work. That's your culture. What you're complaining about, what people put up with. And so when we pay attention to culture and go, okay, how do we do that? How do we say, how can we be Singaporeans working for a Swiss company, or an American company, whatever, with Vietnamese colleagues? And as we're putting those pieces together, that's when and where we have to create this and what we put up with, what we tolerate. What about you, Michael? Have you come up with any ideas, or anybody else? If you've got ideas to answer Michael's question, I think jump in as well. If you've got more of these other questions, we're happy to hear them.
Yeah, you can always also use the chat if you want. And type.
Yeah, if you don't want to put your hand up, which is allowable. So Jason says, we prepared to changing our retail management practice by leveraging different strengths and capabilities of different markets, including those we exhibited in Euro, those in Asia, China. Started 2 to 3 years ago, but still under evolving. No quick answer, no quick approaches. I agree, Jason. No, it's not a quick approach. There's no instant magic wand, but you're doing the work, and this is the thing. We have to do the work and put in the hard work. And when it starts to bear fruit and produce results, it's really quite rewarding when it finally shows up, when we see it. So thank you for that contribution. And one other thing I like in what you just said was by leveraging different strengths. I think this is really critical. quite often we look at strengths and weaknesses or challenge areas or whatever of individuals or organizations, and we go, we have to fix those. We have to fix our weaknesses. But somebody said this, and I love it. If you work on your weaknesses, you'll have strong weaknesses. What we actually do is we leverage our strengths. We say, what are we good at? And how can we apply those skills, those strengths to solving this problem, this challenge, this issue that we have, and or fixing it in some way. And so that's it. So the invitation then is look at your strengths, like Jason said, like, okay, how can we use these things to be better at those things? And that tends to be more successful and more fruitful for individuals as well as for organizations. So who has the next question? We still got a few more minutes.
Yeah, focus on strength, focus on the abilities that we have and the opportunities and possibilities. I like that comment, Jason, here from the chat as well, because it shows that shows the proactive mindset, basically. Looking for the opportunity, looking into the future. Remember the picture with the blue bar and the green arrow. So looking into the future also means thinking in solutions, asking yourself, what are the strength of my team member? What are the strength of the other department? I'm sure we all have experienced silos, right? In companies, we have silos. We have this function, that function, and sometimes they don't work smoothly together. So what can we do? We could look at the strength here as well and enhance them. And one comment eventually to the cultural thing once again. We are sometimes trained, especially we are going global, we are trained in cultural aspects. Oh, do we shake hands? Oh, don't we shake hands? Or how do we behave at dinner? Or what is the culture like? And that's all good. That's all what we also want and need. But we didn't learn how to talk. We didn't learn how to convey messages. That's all for ourselves, and we did not learn. And I think here we want to have such a toolbox, and this is what works for so many companies already, to have like practical leadership tools which share with us, okay, which language can we come up with, and how can we turn the red into the green side, step by step. Is it preparation? Is it thinking in solutions by saying different things? Is it how we give praise? Is it how we sit down and have a goal attainment dialogue, which is always looking at, again, 3 factors: the people.
Yeah.
So we address the people's strength, we address the culture, and number 3, we look for results. And this is our orientation. And I think this orientation is missing in many companies. Performance perspective.
Any other
Stefan.
questions or commentary?
And there is one in the chat.
Oh, Stephen, or Stefan. There you go. All right, on Stefan. I haven't seen you in a while. So Stefan says, I think getting people involved from the performance perspective of the company, and to do so regularly, that may lead to a better engagement. So you mean connecting people to the results that the company is producing? Is that what you're getting at, Stefan?
Yes, I think so. There was, don't mind me jumping in as well to share
Please,
my views. Yeah. So it's quite interesting because on my side, we have always wondered how we can prevent different functions from being silo kind of contributors, but bring everyone together. I think that's very much on like challenges that leaders that I've spoken to as well face. So one very interesting insights that, in fact, I had this insight only earlier this week from a colleague that actually came from another company, a Japanese company. And what they do is every quarter, they would get together and they will present, as in the management will present just the top side of the revenue figures for all the different functions, so that everyone is involved and perhaps know how the firm is doing. So I think that's sort of like, getting buy-in from everyone and, getting everyone involved rather than just the leadership positions, getting to know the figures. I think that helps so that everyone knows where the firm is heading to. And then, and what they did was quite clever as well. So for all the departments, it could be anyone. They nominate someone. Usually it starts from the head of department, but later on, it could be rotated to see who wants to have that limelight or to be on stage to present and to see how they can, how to grow the company or what little ways they can contribute. So by doing so, and everyone gets to see how everyone presents, I think that is a form of engagement and involvement that's quite interesting that I felt could be a way to get people more involved and contribute more.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, give people more visibility. It also helps their own career development. You know, they get seen by other people, so it helps people feel, like you said, that spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on. Great.
Mark and Johannes, I'm Greg. Hi.
Oh, hey, Greg.
Hi. Actually, my observation actually maybe builds on what Stefan just said. I was particularly, I think the bit that resonates with me was the circles of control. I've kind of intuited that without actually kind of putting a structure to it. I was thinking about how teamwork builds and succeeds and how autonomy and silos can be quite destructive. And one of the issues I find, you'll know, I founded an architecture and design practice. So we thrive on change. But nevertheless, change management is actually still very difficult for organizations. And one of the things I find is these external parts, which are on the circle of concern, but aren't under our control, are the parts that sometimes are divisive within an organization, because what the cost control team finds stressful is not necessarily what the design team finds stressful, which is not what the project management teams find stressful. So the stresses and tensions, although the goals are shared, often the external pressures are very much not shared. And as a result, it's difficult for teams to rally around a common set of goals when these external forces, I find this particularly true post-pandemic, interestingly enough, is post-pandemic, these external forces which are seemingly outside of our direct control are the things which are potentially divisive. I just wonder if you have any observations or thoughts on how organizations might overcome that challenge.
Well, I think for me that the biggest aha moment for that circle of concern isn't, for me, this is a very personal, like how it's not that I just go, well, screw it, I can't do anything about it, la, la, la. Because it's still going to be corrosive. I'm still going to be seeing that stuff and feeling that stuff, and it's still going to be worrying me whether I try to zen it out or not. So I think it's about building skills around, okay, what I can control is how I am, how I behave when I'm under the influence or the impact of those things. And what I can influence is how other people are dealing with it. So it's back to that. So where I would go with that would be, how do we build within our organization well, first of all, visibility, so that people can see what other people are going through and understand how it impacts them differently. How can people take responsibility and control over how they're reacting to what's going on? And how can we influence each other in terms of the behaviors that go along with it? Like, yes, we're all under a lot of pressure. So let's say, Greg, for one of your teams, there's a client who's just behaving badly. They're very cranky and they're difficult. And I'm sure that's never happened in the history of your business, but let's say that did, right? So team A is under the gun with this client and they're just acting like a bear. Do the other teams first of all, they can't control him, the bear, but they can control how they react and how they interact with their colleagues when that's happening for them. And the colleagues, if they have visibility of that, can control how they interact and give them some space or support or whatever it is they need. And that's back to that culture piece. It's that people culture piece. How are we building that? Because yes, if we're siloed, you said it, the silo thing is, if I don't know that your client is a complete maniac, I can't support you. I can't help you. I can't even just go out and buy you a coffee because you're having a bad day. And if you don't control your behavior, and every time your client acts like a bear, you act like a bear, well, you're not going to get a lot of empathy from your colleague. So it's that thing there. It's about understanding what, even though you can't control the client, we can control how we react, and we can control how we interact. We can influence how we behave with each other and build that kind of culture.
Yeah, I think as a company owner or founder, I think one of the goals in my professional life is to develop and foster that sense of control throughout my organization, so that each individual in the organization feels a greater sense of control over their work and as you say, influence over others. So that is a cultural piece, and that's probably the hardest bit to build and maintain and sustain.
Yeah, before Johannes jumps in, I know he's chomping at the bit to say something, but I want to put one other thing in, which is the entrepreneur problem, Greg, and you know this, which is part of our challenge as entrepreneurs is taking stuff from our center of control and putting it out into influence. In other words, giving up control, not having to be in charge of and in control of everything that's going on. And a lot of entrepreneurs, founders really struggle with that. And just kind of going, I have to hand this over to my director of finance. I have to hand this over to my whoever. So yeah, that's also part of it, is like just being able to give it up. Johannes, sorry, I've been talking too much. Go ahead.
Oh, great. So, Greg, one thought I have, because you're also, one of your question was, how do I deal with the concerns that are basically there, but it's not shared maybe in the whole company, because we are all too busy as leaders as well, and we don't want to go there and share everything, even if we know something, maybe already some concern. For me, it's two things. As a dynamic leader, I always need to think and want to think, what do I let go? And what do I start doing, right? It's basically change. So what can I let go? And I think in times of uncertainty, we going to need to let go of perfectionism in a sense that, oh, I know the answer to everything. It's not going to happen anymore, right? Even as a leader, we don't know the answers to everything. And that brings me to start also educating the people. Because if you're a leader, and I think many of us agree here as leaders, you share some idea with the team, or you share a strategy in the future with the team, or you share a project update, which brings you closer to the next 4 or 8 weeks strategy in this project. And people will absolutely in the same moment ask you a lot of questions that you can't answer yet. And I think, from my experience, people expect us leaders always to answer everything. And to me, this is changing. We do not know everything, because it's some things are so uncertain, we don't know it yet. We still want to communicate that. And we as leaders need to learn, I communicate something and 1,000 questions will come at me. But I also need to tell the team, hey, I don't know the answer to every of those questions. So I have to be courageous to share something which we don't know yet. And the people, we're going to start educating our teams to not having the answer to everything. And that, for me, is a psychological issue for the people, because that's a change. People need to learn. We don't have the answers. So we kind of go back to, okay, how can we deal with a positive language to get the people on board for change faster, easier, and sometimes be courageous to share more of what we don't know yet, but we do it anyway.
So we're just coming up on the top of the hour. Before we, I know people are jumping off for calls. Can everybody turn their camera on? We'd really love to do like a selfie of the whole screen with everyone's camera on, and then you can jump off. And we'll stick around to talk about more of this stuff with people who want to stick around. We're happy to, but we just want to do one of those selfie pictures. Fabulous.
Just one note, when you smile, just smile a little bit longer, because the screen capture might be a bit slow. I don't want to catch you all at an awkward moment.
I think that's Jeremy's way of saying he wants a new computer.
Great to see you all.
Good to see everybody smiling. Fabulous. Thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, it worked. Thank you so much. And if you want to stick around and talk more, we will stay here. Otherwise, we will catch up later, and we will send out the slide deck, and a recording will be available if you missed some of it, because I know somebody technical issues. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon or rest of the morning if you're in Germany. Yes. Ciao, ciao.
Yeah.
Ciao. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the great questions.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye
good
bye.
one, everyone. Ciao, ciao.